You're still watching Morning Time TV. I'm Arnold Sagawa. Let's head over to Makerere University. As I was telling you earlier on, all the dailies are actually touching on that particular story of Makerere University, the iconic ivory tower, as it's come to be known. These are actually live scenes from Makerere as we speak right now. As you can see, we did give you unconfirmed reports. We're confirming that right now, that there was a kind of a subsequent fire yesterday, and that is now on the west wing, as you can see. Very tragic sights indeed. Remember some of the affected offices. Remember the Directorate of Finance, this office occupied most of the ground and first floors of the right wing of the building. It also included the bursar's office, internal audit, and cash office. We expect that it held a lot of the recent financial paper records of the university. The public relations office, this office was located on the top floor of the right wing and also housed the university's social media office. Heading over to the Directorate of Human Resource, this office that, of course, dealt with all the employee concerns, contracts, and most of the dispute relations. As we bring you that site right there, that particular shot is of the council room. Nothing spared. Very tragic sights indeed. The Central Registry was also at this particular iconic building. The office had several hard copies of critical internal documents. It was also housed on the top floor of the building. And we're getting reports that some of this was actually wiped out, although sources do indicate that most of the articles here have digital copies elsewhere on the university campus. It could actually be the Senate. Investigations are still ongoing. We did get sights of the Minister for Education and Sports at the site, together with the CIID Director, just having some deliberations. Again, investigations are ongoing, but you are getting live sights right now from Makerere University's iconic ivory tower. We'll keep you appraised on everything as it actually transpires in the course of subsequent bulletins. Let's move on now. Back here in the studio, time to move on to the health concerns of the country. One of them being cancer. The latest statistics do show us that cancer deaths do account for, well, as per the last statistics, close to 5%. To help us break down some of these figures, I hope the figures are right, is to my immediate left, Dr. Nixon Nionzima, the head of research, that's of course for the Cancer Institute, and to my extreme left, Dr. Jackson Orem, that is the Executive Director, Cancer Institute. Gentlemen, many thanks for making time to speak to us.
Thank you. Thank you.
First of all, are my figures right for cancer deaths actually accounting for close to 5% of the country's death? Dr. Orem?
Well, there is no accurate figure, but we can range it between 5 to 10%.
5 to 10%.
Yeah.
Right. News coming through, let me come to you, Dr. Nixon, is quite joyous, should I say, where there's talk of Uganda getting this huge new machine. For someone as pedestrian as myself, who did terribly at biology, how would you describe this particular machine?
So what you're describing is the latest radiotherapy machine that the Uganda Cancer Institute has installed. This is a linear accelerator. It's a true beam linear accelerator. It's the top range, the most cutting edge machine that we have currently. It has been installed and is ready for use by patients of the Uganda Cancer Institute. The advantage of this machine is that we're going to get more targeted therapy, targeted radiotherapy for our patients, more precise radiotherapy for these patients. And as the Cancer Institute, what we're looking at is that the scenarios we had in the past where patients had to either go to India, go to South Africa, or leave other countries to access these high-tech equipments are going to be things of the past. And what we're going to have is providing cutting-edge cancer care to our patients within the country.
Doctor, if one was to try and understand radiotherapy or chemo, as we hear it in the movies, what would be the difference between what we were deploying as per now and what Dr. Nixon touches on, which is more targeted? I understand the more targeted, but what cuts this across and what makes it actually easier to target?
I think that's a very good question. The context is that we are making progress in the sense that we are now moving from what is basic to now what Nixon has rightly said, precision treatment. That means actually we are improving now the quality of the delivery of the care for our cancer patients. So the treatment that we have been giving has not been bad treatment, has been actually very good treatment, but using basic equipment. And that is what we call the Cobalt 60 machine. And as you know, we have installed 2 new Cobalt 60 machines, and that is what we are now using. But it is only proper that we should now move to the next level. And actually, that is what the new machine is going to bring in the equation.
Nixon, just touch base on the stats. What's the turnaround time with the old machine, and what do you expect to be the turnaround time? Well, I don't want to call them recoveries, but the word is when it recedes. I think you guys have a technical term that you call it. What do you expect to be the turnaround time vis-a-vis what was, and with the new machine, what it could be?
So there are 2 basic concepts. When you look at the Cobalt 60 machine, you have an active source that you have to replace every 5 years. So the source decays. So radioactive source decays over time.
Not plutonium, I hope.
No, this is Cobalt 60. So it decays with time. The new machine that we have is actually generating the radiotherapy on demand through acceleration of electrons. So you don't have the same concept of decay of the active source, meaning that even the risk to the environment is minimal compared to the Cobalt 60. That said, of course, we have in our construction mitigation measures to make sure that there's no potential harm to the environment. So through the construction, through all these safety measures that we put in place. But in terms of treating patients, we are restricted by the numbers of machines that we had in the past. So we had so many patients all queuing up to use this one machine in the past. Now what we have increased is our capacity to actually handle all our patients so that there's no waiting time for our patients to access radiotherapy. So with 3 machines, it means that all our patients will actually readily access radiotherapy whenever it's needed.
I remember a few moons ago, Dr. M, when I think we're getting another machine, and there were reports that it comes with such a hefty cost to do the housing because the radioactive nature of the machine, as definitely Dr. Nixon is also explaining, is in such a manner that you cannot just throw it in our offices here. You know, that would not end well. Just give me a sense of whether or not housing 3 machines, or even the new one, are these fixed costs, do they still stand, or is this new technology that we need not worry about the radioactive nature of the accommodation?
So I think your history is exactly right. At the beginning, we had the challenge of where to actually put these equipments. Actually, in as far as radiotherapy is concerned, the biggest cost is the capital investment in what we call the bunker. You must have it. Buying the machine itself is actually not a big deal, but having the housing to have it safely, that is where actually the cost is. And I'm happy to inform you that actually Uganda has done very well. We have just completed the construction of what I would call one of a kind bunker in sub-Saharan Africa, where we have within the structure space to accommodate up to 4 state-of-the-art linear accelerator like the one that we are just about to be commissioning. And then actually 2 high-dose brachytherapy equipment. That means in all, actually, we have space for 6 machines. That is a lot of space by African standards. So that one is ready. So that means that the next phase that we should move to is actually populating these spaces, or the bunkers, as I may call it, and we have started with 1.
It's quite scary, the term used, because bunker would mean it goes back to Cold War days, you know, when you have nuclear silos. So when I hear bunker, it's quite alarming. If we're to touch on, Dr. Nixon, the backlog, how many patients were you seeing with the old equipment vis-a-vis what you would be expecting at this particular time, if we have a best case scenario of opening up our borders and then, well, we start seeing medical tourism?
Yes, so on average at the Uganda Cancer Institute, we, on radiotherapy, we're actually seeing almost 100 patients per day that need radiotherapy. Now in the past, we had 3 shifts on the old machine. Well, old is relative. It's the new Cobalt 6 that was bought in 2017.
New technology.
Yes. But we were seeing about 70 patients per day, and we had 3 shifts. People were working from 5 a.m. to midnight, and people are giving actually radiotherapy for that whole time. Now with the new machines, we have expanded to actually almost 120 patients every day receiving radiotherapy. That's with the 2 functional machines. What we hope is that with the addition of the 3rd one, we'll be able to push this number to about 150 to 200 and eliminate any waiting or delays for our patients. So our goal is that when somebody needs radiotherapy, radiotherapy will be readily available for them. Yeah.
Let's talk about manning some of these machines. I like what you're saying. You're saying the old machine, and then Dr. M has to correct you, and he says, that's 2017. Hey, it's not that old. That's just 3 years ago. Yeah. Dr. M, if I'm to ask you about, this sounds like quite new technology.
Correct.
The oncologists who are going to be manning these machines, have they been trained? I understand they've been trained in Israel or something. Give me a sense of what that takes, because Dr. Nixon here is saying, you know, if you're doing a 5 a.m. and then you close at midnight, those are some long shifts. What does it take, and what was the cost coming into this enrichment of the human capital?
Yeah, so I think the point to make here is that it is a teamwork. So we have different categories of, I would say, users that we should actually train. We have the technicians, we have the physicists, and then of course we have the radiation oncologists. And all those are actually being trained. Of course, given that we are just acquiring this new technology, that means we must have in place the people who will kickstart this immediately. And those are already in place. They're being trained. And actually, I would say they're refining actually their techniques right now. But in as far as the new human resources is concerned, we are actually having people training abroad in terms of the technicians. We have several of them who are undergoing training right now. And then also the oncologists, actually we have a couple of them who are actually undergoing training, especially in South Africa. So we are well prepared for this new technology.
And just to add to what Dr. Emma said, our goal is that in the future, all these people that we're training abroad are going to be trained locally. So we're going to partner with local training institutions, Makerere University and other universities, to ensure that now that we have the equipment, why shouldn't we have the training at home? So all these people that we're training abroad are going to form the seed or the needers for local training for all these highly specialized cancer courses.
I remember interacting with a few guys like yourselves a few years ago, and well, one of the biggest challenges that came with some of this equipment was the cost of repair. Some of these machines were GE, General Electric, which I'm sure is a household name in your line of work. I don't know if this is a GE actually. What happens, have you mitigated for that? Have you hedged against that vis-a-vis, at least GE has a plant, well, they have repair services in Nairobi, definitely Joburg too. when it comes to this, I understand this machine was installed by people from Turkey. What happens now? Is this something that you guys have mitigated against? What's the brand? Repairs? Who does the repairs? Where are they based? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think the equipment we are talking about is made by a company called Varian. Varian is an American household name in as far as linear accelerators are concerned. There are actually two companies that you talk about when you are talking radiotherapy in terms of linear accelerator. You are either talking of Varian or you are talking of Elekta. Elekta is Swedish and Varian is American. So the equipment that we are getting actually is that. And regarding the cost of maintenance and all that, we do have service contract that is going to run for quite some time. And even if that service contract runs out, we have to renew it. And we work with representative of Varian that is actually based in country. So that means we are going to have, actually, I would say about 3 layers. We are going to have the in-country representative of the manufacturer. We are going to have our own people also trained in things like troubleshooting or making some immediate repairs or immediate fixing in terms if there is anything that goes wrong. And then we also have the backup of the manufacturer that is going to be all encapsulated in the service contract.
Right. Let's move this conversation just a bit and just talk about the numbers, at least patient-wise. What is the curve like? Are we going up? Is it just a matter of, this is in terms of course, not COVID, but in terms of cancer patients? Is it, from the last figures that I saw, at least there was a bit of a climb. Is it just a matter of more diagnosis, more awareness? Definitely, the Cancer Institute is doing its job because people are getting more and more awareness, and they don't just think, oh, it's witchcraft or something. What can be attributed, what is the most prevalent type of cancer in the country right now, and what can you attribute that to? Maybe the two of you could touch that.
Okay, I think I'll start and Dr. M can supplement. But what we're seeing is that over the past 20 years, we have seen an increase in the incidence of cancer. That's the absolute number of new cases of cancer that we're seeing in the country and the Uganda Cancer Institute. We've seen increases in specific cancers, but also in cancer overall. So I've seen a rise, for example, in cervical cancer. We have seen a rise in the incidence of breast cancer, in prostate cancer, and these are due to multiple causes. Now, for cervical cancer, over the past 20 years, some of the increase has been due to HIV/AIDS. And we're now beginning to see that it's beginning to plateau because people now have access to antiretroviral therapy. We're also seeing some declines in the other HIV-associated cancers, such as Kaposi sarcoma. Again, as we see more people accessing antiretroviral therapy, we see a decline in some of the cancers that are associated with HIV/AIDS. But overall, the increase in the number of cancer cases is multifactorial. We know that the life expectancy in Uganda is increasing. So when I was in primary school, the life expectancy was 42 years. It's now up to 60 years. And as people age, we know that the incidence of cancer increases. But we also know that there are changes in lifestyles of people. The number of people that is obese or overweight has increased. The diet that we consume is different. And of course, there are also other infectious diseases in this country that we are seeing that are associated with cancer. I think what we are seeing is what we'd call a demographic transition, that as the population ages, also the type of diseases that we're seeing in the population is going to change. And cancer is one of those diseases that increases when people are no longer dying from, say, pneumonia or malaria. And that's what we're seeing at the Cancer Institute, and we're also developing actually measures to mitigate this. So as also we do more screening, we're seeing more patients and getting these patients earlier.
Doctor?
So I think in terms of numbers or figures, we base our statistics on what we call population-based cancer registry. And unfortunately, we do not have that many of those type of registries that are accurate. And from those registries, we in terms of incidence or new cancer cases at any one given time, we are talking about 350 new cancer cases per every 100,000 population. That means if you got 100,000 people at any one time, 350 among those will be new cancer cases. And that actually is an increase, because about maybe 10 or so years ago, we were talking about 200 new cancer cases per every 100,000 population. So now that we are having 350, that means actually we have increased by about 150 on top.
But was the diagnosis there? Because at the time, one could easily also argue that, you know, the Cancer Institute was not as flamboyant as it is right now. There were no budding doctors. Well, maybe you guys were there. But maybe now it's more staffed, more equipment coming in, more diagnosis. Doesn't that inform the shorter figure at the time? Or is that unfair for me to really use that logic?
I think you are both right, but I would say not accurate. What I can say is that even at that time, actually some fair amount of diagnosis was being made. But of course you are right, because right now we are pretty good at actually refining the diagnosis. So that means there are certain things that maybe were not which were being called cancer, which were not cancers. Right now we have the capacity actually of accurately telling whether they are cancers or not. So in that sense, you are right. But the most important thing is that there is actually an increase. So we talk about there being a shift in the numbers in the direction that I would say showing that actually cancer has increased in our population.
And the most prevalent still on the same page as Dr. Nixon?
Yes, the most prevalent. Of course, you have to divide people into different categories. We can talk about cancers in women. The most prevalent cancer in women right now is actually cervical cancer, followed by Kaposi sarcoma, and then cancer of the breast, and then lymphomas, etc. That will follow. And then in men, the most prevalent cancer now is actually cancer of the prostate, followed again by Kaposi sarcoma, and then number 3 is cancer of the esophagus, cancer of the stomach being next, and then liver and lymphomas.
Sorry, okay, lymphoma I might know from house, but Kaposi sarcoma, there you lost me a bit. If you ought to explain that to us, the rest of us. This, I mean, I feel like Dr. House right now. What's Kaposi sarcoma? I think the next thing you're going to tell me is, what's the other he used to love? Lupus. Yes, lupus. What's Kaposi sarcoma?
Yes, Kaposi sarcoma is a cancer that affects the skin. It is usually mainly seen affecting the lower limbs of patients. It is incidentally a cancer which is caused by an infection with a virus which is called human herpes virus type 8. And it has been here for a long time. But unfortunately, with the advent of HIV, actually the numbers has increased. Previously, it was being seen mainly in older people, mainly men. Then came the 80s with the advent of HIV. We started seeing it in younger people, and also the proportion of women and men affected being almost equal. So that actually was one of the indicators in those days, actually that should have alerted us that there was something new in the environment, and that was HIV. So Kaposi sarcoma, yes, is a cancer of the skin, is mainly affecting the limbs, and then it is mainly now driven by HIV in our population.
A few years ago, there was a daunting stat that came out that showed that this is unconfirmed. It might have been one of those posts that go around. But it stated that a dog in California stood a higher chance of getting chemo than someone in Nigeria. We're spanning this towards population vis-a-vis the machines, and just give me a sense of how bad the situation is when it comes to the populace vis-a-vis the equipment on hand across much of sub-Saharan Africa? I mean, you guys would have these stats, and I'm sure you interact with other researchers and people in your line of work. Give me a sense of how bad the situation is. This being cognizant of the fact that we are crossing the 100 million people mark by, well, we have what, the second highest population growth in the world? Give me a sense of how bad the situation is, populace vis-a-vis equipment. Let me start with you, Nixon. I think, okay. Doc, you'll wrap it up.
Thank you. So our belief at the Cancer Institute is that where you live, where you stay should not be a barrier to accessing cancer care. And that is what we believe, and that is what we are practicing at the Cancer Institute. But looking at the statistics, when you look at radiotherapy, for example, the International Atomic Energy Agency recommends that you need one radiotherapy machine per 1 million population. So in Uganda, and the president said last night that we have a population of 46 million, the estimate is that we would have 46 radiotherapy machines in Uganda at the moment. And right now, we have 3 radiotherapy machines. So you can get a sense of how well we're doing as a country. We need 43 more machines to meet today's demand. Now, radiotherapy is not limited to cancer. It's also used for other diseases. It can use for example, people have keloids that are not responding to surgery. You can actually send them for radiotherapy, and a number of other disorders. So if we have 3 machines, right now what it's limited to is only cancer. But also for cancer, you can imagine it's limited. As a Cancer Institute, we're thinking about establishing regional cancer centers to actually take cancer care to the population. We have 4 planned regional cancer centers. We have Mbarara, we have Gulu, we have Arua, and we have Mbale. Now, the expectation is that in each of those regional cancer centers, we're going to have radiotherapy machines, we're going to have chemotherapy, we're going to have cancer surgery, we're going to have a comprehensive cancer service in all these areas. And this is 2020. We have 3 machines that are not in all those regional cancer centers. So in a sense, we're still constrained by the resources that we have. We need 43 more machines as a country to be able to meet the minimum requirements set by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Now, that's just radiotherapy, but there are other needs for cancer care. For example, nuclear medicine is one that we also need in the country. In the press, you always be hearing of people going to, again, India or Kenya or South Africa to do PET or nuclear medicine. And we need that in the country. Fortunately, we're establishing a center at the Uganda Cancer Institute. But again, that's just one machine for the whole country, for 46 million people. So we're still constrained as a country, but we've made significant strides over the past 10, 15 years. The accessibility and availability to chemotherapy has improved. In 2016, we had 1 radiotherapy machine. We currently have 3. So the ratios have improved over time. And I think that's what we're happy about, that we're making positive progress. We're making strides as a country. We've made the Mbarara Cancer Center operational, so people are able to access cancer care in Mbarara. Right now, we're seeing about 1,000 new patients in Mbarara, which is big progress. So the people that would come to Kampala or that may have failed to come to Kampala are able to get cancer care in Mbarara. Gulu should start construction this year, and Arua is also becoming operational within this year. So I think we're making big strides as a country, and that's the positive that we're taking away. As far as the rest of sub-Saharan Africa is concerned, as a sub-region, we still have challenges in access to radiotherapy. We also have countries that do not have any radiotherapy services, and these really impede access to cancer care.
So I would argue that creates such a huge opportunity for you. Dr. Rev.
Yes. So I think to supplement what Nixon has said, I should start by just saying that the statistic that he's quoting is actually conservative. When we are talking about ideal requirement for radiotherapy equipment, the ideal is supposed to be 1 machine for 500,000 people. Yeah. So that means actually we need double that number if we are to have an ideal situation. But that said, actually, I think we as Uganda, we have been very fortunate. We have done many things that other people had not thought about many, many years. Because to have, for instance, in our country, a comprehensive cancer treatment center or cancer institute, it is something that many people would wish to have. But we started this almost, I don't know how many years ago. The Uganda Cancer Institute was started in 1967. So to think that there is a country that can think that far is really a big plus for us. And that has put us in a different category altogether, because right now, as you rightly stated, in Africa, people are really struggling to even have in place, you know, a facility for treating cancer patients. So if we have in Uganda, despite all the challenges that we have, you know, a place where people can go, where they can get treatment, and they can actually get the best or meet one of the best trained oncologists, is an envy of very many people in this part of the world. So I think it's something that we should be proud about, and that should not make you be surprised that the Uganda Cancer Institute in the East African region is the East Africa Center of Excellence. That is the background.
Doctors, I want you to just take off your doctor caps and hats and stethoscopes and put them on the side. And just think as policymen right now, what need be done to position Uganda as the place for medical tourism? Let's start with the cancer side. We could touch, I mean, this is your field. What need be done at least to reposition the country to move in that direction? Because let's face it, there's some countries, even East and Central Africa, that don't have what the space for 6 in the bunker and the 3 already here. How do we harness that and position ourselves as the country, as policy men right now? Let me start with you, Doc.
So thank you. I think for us, what we see first is that we need to provide the highest standard for Ugandans. If we are providing the highest quality care for Ugandans, then we know that the Ugandans who are surviving from cancer will be our ambassadors, and we'll take the name of the Uganda Cancer Institute out there and sell the name of the Cancer Institute and invite others to Uganda.
What's your success rate right now?
The success rate is variable and depends on the type of cancer. So, for example, if you look at breast cancer, what defines the success is really when the patients come. So we have stages 1 to 4, and most of our patients come in stage 3 and stage 4. So about 80% of our patients are in stage 3 and stage 4. Now, stage 3 and stage 4 mean the cancer is advanced. And so success is actually defined by that. And our 2-year survival for breast cancer in that age range is about 42%. But we know that overall in Uganda, about 80% of the patients that are diagnosed with cancer die within 1 to 2 years. However, that's again dependent on the stage, and what we want to move to is more sensitization and early detection of the cancers. So for us as an institute, if we were to transform the Cancer Institute into what would be a regional hub for cancer care, so that we have everybody coming to the Uganda Cancer Institute for care from the region and from the rest of sub-Saharan Africa, it's really more investment. These 6 bunkers that we have built, let these 6 bunkers have equipment. The nuclear medicine facility that we are constructing, let it have equipment so that people come to Uganda for nuclear medicine. Let these services be available to Ugandans at an affordable cost, to other East Africans at a cost that's both able to meet the cost of running the equipment, but also bearable by the people who need the services. And have drugs available. If we can stimulate the local manufacturing sector so that we have chemotherapy produced locally, other targeted therapies produced locally within the country, so that it's more affordable to Ugandans and more accessible, then you're actually able to transform the sector, because all the services will be locally available at an affordable cost, and then you transform the survival from the 42% we have talked about to maybe 90%. Of course, you have to combine this with education of the population so that people are able to recognize symptoms. You have to combine this with prevention, so you vaccinate against human papillomavirus, HPV, and HBV, so that these cancers that are preventable are not in the population.
Right. Yeah. I see that.
Yeah.
Dr. Policyman.
Yeah, so I think all this, actually, it takes a deliberate effort. And that means actually, in our case, we have already an example of something which is successful. In other words, you call it a brand. The country has a brand for management of cancer, a brand for research on cancer in not only Africa, but in low and middle income countries. So if you start from that, and then as a policy person, you take it forward, you sell it around the world, that is something which is unique that actually will then attract other people, first of all, to come and see the model that you have and try to replicate it. That's one. And then two, because you're already good at it, they would want their people to come and experience it. That is number two. And then number three, they would want also to send their people for training. That means you are not only going to be a hub for treatment, you are going to be a hub for research, you are also going to be a hub for training. And I think that is actually what a center of excellence is meant to be. So from a policy perspective, resources are needed to make sure that this brand is popularized.
You want to touch on that, Nixon?
Well, of course, like Dr. Emma said, resources are needed, like I mentioned, but for us, again, as a Cancer Institute, it's a center of excellence that's comprehensive. So research, fund the research at the Cancer Institute, but also promote the research. Training, partner with the local training institutions, but also other international training institutions. And then the care component, which is the third arm of the center of excellence.
Two things. When you mentioned the investment part, maybe where I should have started is how much does the machine go for? I'm sure we're talking like $1 million or 1.5.
Yeah.
Then the other would be at the height of what was before, well before the East Africa Community, its predecessor, where, let's say, Kenya housed the aviation arm. Uganda, Mulago was where, almost everyone, I mean, Dr. Rem, maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, people would come here and, study and, the medical part, you're very assured that is a Uganda thing. Aviation, you're over in Kenya. The railways were not very certain there. Give me a sense of if that is a model that we could rethink East Africa community-wise, and maybe have an East Africa Cancer Institute, as opposed to being very, very decentralized. And also, maybe you could also touch on the money bit. I mean, if it's $1.5 million, that could also be something. Okay. Doctor, or
yeah, so I think that is exactly what our leadership in the East African community are now thinking. You have heard of the East Africa Center of Excellence. Actually, the member states have decided to tackle the non-communicable diseases from that angle, right, by establishing what they call the Centers of Excellence. And these Centers of Excellence is going, first of all, to concentrate in the area of development of human resource through training and then research. Why human resource? Because research has shown that actually the majority of people who are going out for treatment for heart diseases, for cancers, and kidney diseases, etc., are going there because of lack of people, not because of institutions. So for that matter, it is important to develop the human resource capacities locally. So by establishing these centers of excellence, first of all, concentrating on training, then actually we are going to make sure that the experts are now here, so there will be no reason for people saying that now we want to go out and see some other people. So that is actually one. So the centers of excellence in East Africa are going to be in Kenya. There is going to be one for kidney diseases. So that means actually all the countries in the East African region, when it comes to kidney diseases, they're looking at Kenya. And then for heart diseases, they're going to be looking at Tanzania. Actually, that center is going to be established in Dar es Salaam. And then when it comes to nutritional diseases, the center is supposed to be in Burundi. And then for health, it is going to be in Rwanda. And then that leaves now for Uganda, given the background that I've already told you, we have already a very strong history in the management and research of cancer. the Uganda Cancer Institute is that center.
With the magic year, 1967.
Yeah.
Just wrap that up, Dr. Nixon.
Yeah.
We're actually running out of time.
Yeah, so I think in summary what Dr. Remy is saying is that we have not gone back to the 1970s pre-East African community, but we have already set in motion the plans to actually have the East Africa Center of Excellence. The Uganda Cancer Institute was designated as the East Africa Center of Excellence for Cancer Care, Research and Training in 2016. And we're building the necessary infrastructure to actually be this East African Center of Excellence, not just in name, but also in the physical infrastructure. So we have all these buildings that are coming up, the radiation therapy infrastructure, the nuclear medicine infrastructure, the training and research infrastructure has all been set up by the Cancer Institute to actually transform the Uganda Cancer Institute into the East African Regional Center of Excellence in cancer care, research and training.
Gentlemen, many thanks for making time to speak to us. To my left, Dr. Nixon Niyonzima, the head of research at the Uganda Cancer Institute. To my extreme left, Dr. Jackson Oram, the executive director of the Uganda Cancer Institute. Many thanks again.
You're welcome.
That's where we'll leave it for this edition of Morning at NTV. Arnold Sagawa is my name. I'll be back at 1 p.m. with NTV at 1. But for now, Freda Nakazibwe is coming in with Masters on Mutiap.